All right, let's dive into this explainer. Right now, we are constantly surrounded by these incredibly powerful algorithms. They're generating text, writing code, and honestly, doing things that used to seem totally impossible. It feels a little bit like magic sometimes, right? But today, we're going to completely reframe this whole AI revolution. We're going to explore how our roles as creators and workers are drastically shifting away from raw manual execution and moving towards something way more valuable: essential human wisdom. We're basically pulling back the curtain to look at the human ingenuity that actually powers the machine.
We've got a fantastic roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the AI execution shift, move into the rise of the orchestrator, explore crossing the semiotic bridge, unpack this idea of the record of sweat, and finally end with the sovereign pilot.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, the AI execution shift, and what we're calling the bugle call from Google.
So there's a researcher at Google named Barbara, and she recently issued what is essentially a bugle call to humanity. Her point? As AI rapidly takes over tedious tasks, human discernment isn't fading away. Actually, it's becoming our absolute ultimate asset. And this quote from Google's former chief economist Hal Varian hits the nail on the head. He shows us that this is historical pattern. Think about it. Spreadsheets absolutely didn't kill finance jobs, right? They just shifted them away from manual arithmetic and toward high-level analysis. Search engines didn't eliminate research. They shifted it toward synthesis and judgment. In that exact same way, AI is elevating our core purpose. It's pushing us heavily toward interpretation, communication, and leadership.
Here's the bottom line. Human intent is literally more important now than it has ever been. The machine is stepping in to handle the raw, mechanical rendering. It does the statistical guessing. It does the heavy lifting. Meanwhile, the actual economic and societal value shifts entirely to human judgment. We're the ones being called upon to provide the moral mandate and the strategic interpretation. The machine computes, but we have to be the wisdom in the loop.
Moving right along to Section 2, the rise of the orchestrator and the geometry of modern authorship.
Now, if Google provided the macroeconomic bugle call, inventor Kyle McLean Smith provides the architectural answer. He maps out the geometry of modern authorship through history. Back in the 18th century, we had this idea of the romantic genius. The solitary creator manually sweating over every single word or pixel, supposedly pulling inspiration right from the ether. Fast forward to 1967, and theorists like Roland Barthes introduced the scripture, a creator who just rearranges existing cultural symbols. But today, in the 2020s, we are undergoing a massive phase shift. We are becoming the algorithmic orchestrator. We are those strategic managers answering Google's call for human wisdom rather than doing all that tedious rendering by hand.
I absolutely love how the source architecture documents frame this. The human pilot applies the intent, but the agent cell executes the sweat. This right here is our new division of labor. We surrender the pure brute force technical execution to the machine. The AI is acting as our digital scripter. But, and this is absolutely key, we retain 100% of the overarching strategy, the emotional resonance, and the rhetorical control.
That brings us to Section 3, crossing the semiotic bridge, connecting mind to metal.
So, how do we actually get a machine to execute our highly specific, nuanced strategies without totally losing our meaning in translation? Well, we have to juxtapose two completely alien worlds. On one side, we have our human cognition, which the sources playfully refer to as OS alpha. It's warm, it's highly associative, beautifully messy, and completely driven by context and feeling. But on the flip side, we've got the arithmetic logic unit, the ALU of the microchip. In that world, it is cold, rigid, strictly deterministic, and driven entirely by physical electrical voltages. There is literally zero semantic meaning down there in the silicon. It is utterly blind to human intentions.
To connect these two vastly different realities, we have to build what the sources call the semiotic bridge. This is strictly formatted text. Think of code like JSON or a Python script, acting as a universal deterministic interface. The sources actually go as far as calling this code a divine script. It acts as this uncompromising translation layer that allows us to safely compile our boundless, messy human imagination directly into exact physical hardware execution. We are quite literally tricking rocks into thinking using lightning and text. And it works in 3 exact steps. First, your messy, associative human intent initiates a strategy in your mind. Second, you formalize that intent into structured text, aggressively pushing it across that semiotic bridge. And third, that lossless text perfectly forces exact hardware execution down in the deterministic logic gates of the ALU.
This step-by-step workflow forces the continuous, swirling flow of our imagination to squeeze, literally squeeze, through a rigid textual bridge to command the processor. Which brings us to Section 4, the record of sweat and proof of biological friction.
Now, we know modern AI relies heavily on probabilistic guessing. It generates what the sources call an automated miasma of hallucinations. Because of this, if you don't proactively steer the machine, you risk becoming something pretty terrifying, a moral crumple zone. Tech scholar Madeleine Claire Elish points out that just like the front of a car is explicitly designed to crush on impact to save the cabin, humans are increasingly being kept in the loop of complex AI systems just to passively absorb the legal and ethical liability when the algorithm inevitably messes up. If the AI crashes reality, the tech companies are going to point directly at you.
To survive this era, you absolutely have to combat that automated miasma. You must actively reject the machine's probabilistic hallucinations, and you do this by enforcing what's called human protortion. That is the proactive, painstaking manual steering required to bend the machine back to your exact mandate. By doing this, you generate a record of sweat. This is a verifiable, cryptographic history proving that actual metabolic human energy, biological friction, and true intent were spent to execute the digital mission.
To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this modern digital curation, consider this staggering number from the source documents: 55.5 million. That is 55.5 million tokens of verified digital sweat recently recorded by a sovereign human pilot coordinating an AI swarm. It stands as a literal digital monument, proving mathematically out at the very edges of the network that a living, breathing human pilot was undeniably at the wheel, actively steering the output and accepting the liability.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, the sovereign pilot, and wielding the divine script.
It is so absolutely crucial to remember that modern AI is not an autonomous, conscious creator god. It doesn't have an inner life, it's never stubbed its toe, and it definitely doesn't experience the world. It is simply a highly advanced mechanical tool, silicon rocks waiting for your explicit, deterministic text commands. You are the undeniable painter. The machine is merely the brush.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. As the digital and physical worlds increasingly collide, and as these algorithms integrate into literally everything we do, you have a fundamental choice. Will you just lazily rent your thoughts out into the AI fog, passively acting as a moral crumple zone absorbing the machine's failures? Or will you actively seize that divine script, apply your manual sweat of the brow, and act as a sovereign pilot orchestrating reality? The tools are sitting right there on the command line waiting for you, but the choice to provide that irreplaceable human spark, that's entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.